The forest was quiet except for the gentle rustle of pine needles in the wind. Deep among the trees, an old cabin leaned slightly to one side, its wooden walls weathered by decades of storms and sun. The roof sagged in places and the windows were cloudy with dust. It was the kind of place that most people would pass by without a second thought, a forgotten corner of the world. But for Michael, it was more than a shelter. It was home. Michael had not always lived in the forest. Once he had walked crowded city streets, lived in small apartments, and held jobs that left him tired but proud. But life had a way of taking unexpected turns. A series of losses, misunderstandings, and disappointments had led him here, far from the hum of the city, living a quiet life in the embrace of nature. Despite his hardships, Michael carried a calm dignity. His hands were rough and calloused from years of labor, but they were careful hands. He treated every task with thought and patience. When he hammered a loose board back into place or cleaned away the moss on the roof, he did it as though the cabin were a living thing. It had been abandoned for years, yet Michael believed that even forgotten places deserved care. That morning, the air was crisp with the first chill of autumn. A layer of frost covered the grass, sparkling faintly in the pale light of dawn. Michael moved around the cabin with practiced ease, carrying planks of wood and tools. He checked each board, tapped them with his hammer, and smiled faintly at the way some of the repairs were holding. This cabin was more than shelter. It was a symbol of patience and perseverance. Michael paused for a moment and looked around. The forest was alive with quiet beauty. Birds darted between the trees, squirrels chased each other along branches, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of pine and earth. Even in his solitude, Michael felt connected to the world in a way he had never experienced in the city. It was a peaceful life, simple and honest, and he had learned to find happiness in it. Meanwhile, many miles away in a city that never seemed to sleep, Emma Collins awoke in her luxurious apartment. She was a woman of wealth and influence, a billionaire whose name was known in business circles across the country. Her life was filled with meetings, investments, and endless obligations. On paper, she had everything anyone could desire: a beautiful home, expensive clothes, and the admiration of many. Yet, as she sat in her apartment overlooking the city skyline, Emma felt a familiar emptiness. Despite her accomplishments, she realized she had never truly known what it meant to be loved, not for what she had, but for who she was. She had been admired, envied, and respected, but love had always been distant, measured in convenience, status, or appearance. It was a truth she could not ignore, though she rarely admitted it even to herself. That day, Emma decided she needed a break from her busy life. She rented a car and drove to the countryside, a rare excursion away from the demands of the city. The road twisted and turned, flanked by golden fields and dense forests. She felt a brief sense of relief as the city faded behind her, replaced by open skies and the gentle sounds of nature. She had no idea that her path would soon intersect with a man whose life was so different from her own, yet whose presence would change her world completely. As the afternoon sun lowered toward the horizon, Emma's car shuddered and stopped. She tried the ignition again, but the engine refused to turn. Panic rose in her chest. She was far from help, in the middle of winding dirt roads surrounded by towering trees. For the first time in a long while, she felt a pang of vulnerability. She stepped out of the car, the wind cold against her skin, and looked around. It was then that she saw smoke rising faintly in the distance. Curious and hopeful, she followed it, winding through narrow paths between tall pines. Soon she came upon the cabin just as Michael was carrying a plank to the roof. He stopped and turned, squinting against the sunlight. Emma approached cautiously. "Excuse me," she called, her voice a little shaky. My car broke down. Can you help me?" Michael studied her for a moment. She was clearly not from around here, dressed in clothes that looked far too fine for the woods. Yet there was no malice in her eyes, only a hint of worry. He wiped his hands on a rag and nodded. "Of course," he said softly. "You can stay here for the night. We'll see about your car in the morning." Emma hesitated. Pride made her want to refuse, but the cold and isolation made her decision easy. "Thank you," she said quietly. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the cabin glowed with the warm light of a fire. Michael had prepared a simple meal of bread, soup, and fresh water. It was not the fine dining Emma was used to, but she felt a strange comfort in the simplicity. As they ate, Michael spoke gently about the forest, the seasons, and the small joys of life in nature. He told stories of animals he had observed, storms he had weathered, and moments of peace he had discovered in solitude. Emma listened intently. His voice was calm, steady, and full of warmth. She found herself drawn to it, feeling emotions she had long buried under layers of ambition and expectation. After dinner, Michael showed Emma around the cabin. He pointed out the repairs he had made, explaining with pride how each board had been carefully fitted and how he had strengthened the foundation to withstand the coming winter. He spoke not with boastfulness, but with genuine love for the work itself. Emma watched him move, noting the care in every action, the patience in his hands, and the quiet strength in his demeanor. As night fell, the forest around the cabin became a tapestry of shadows and moonlight. Crickets chirped softly and the wind rustled the pine trees above. Emma sat quietly by the fire, feeling a peace she had never known in her mansion or boardroom. She realized that in this simple cabin, with a man who had so little yet gave so much, she had glimpsed something deeper than wealth or power. Michael glanced at her and smiled faintly. "You'll be safe here tonight," he said. "The forest is quiet and the cabin will keep you warm. Rest, and tomorrow we'll see about your car." Emma nodded, a lump forming in her throat. She had come to the countryside expecting only solitude, but instead she had found kindness, warmth, and a strange connection that tugged at her heart. For the first time, she began to wonder what it truly meant to love and be loved, not for appearances, wealth, or convenience, but for who she truly was inside. As she lay down on the modest bed Michael had prepared, she thought about the man who had welcomed her so freely without expectation or judgment. She realized that in his quiet life, in his simple actions and gentle care, he had already begun teaching her a lesson she had never learned in all her years of wealth and success. That love was not about riches or control, it was about presence, kindness, and giving oneself fully without expectation. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, and the cabin stood firm, a sanctuary in the forest. Michael slept peacefully in another room, unaware that the woman he had helped would change his life as much as he was about to change hers. And so, under the first stars of the evening, two very different lives began to intersect in a place where the world seemed to have paused. One was a man who had little but gave everything, and the other a woman who had everything but had yet to learn what it truly meant to love. The stage was set for a journey that neither of them could have predicted, a story of patience, care, and the quiet discovery of the heart. The next morning, sunlight filtered softly through the dusty windows of the cabin, casting long golden streaks across the worn wooden floor. Michael was already awake, moving quietly to stoke the fire and prepare a simple breakfast. The smell of toasted bread and warm soup slowly filled the cabin. Outside, birds chirped and the wind whispered through the pines, carrying a scent of damp earth and morning freshness. Emma stirred from the modest bed she had slept in, rubbing her eyes. She had slept well, better than she had in years. For the first time, she had felt safe without alarms, security, or schedules dictating every moment of her life. She noticed the warmth of the cabin, the gentle crackle of the fire, and the soft calm radiating from Michael as he moved. It struck her how different this world was from her polished city apartment, where everything was sleek, shiny, and controlled. Here there was imperfection, yet it felt honest and real. Michael turned to her and smiled softly. "Good morning, Emma. Sleep well?" "Yes," she replied, her voice quiet but sincere. "I haven't slept this peacefully in a long time." Michael shrugged modestly. "The forest has a way of doing that. It slows you down, makes you notice things you forget in the city." Emma nodded. She had been noticing things all night. The sound of the wind through the trees, the smell of wood smoke, the faint creak of the cabin walls settling. These were sounds she would have never noticed back home, where everything was designed to be silent and perfect. Over breakfast, they spoke about simple matters. Michael asked about her journey, and Emma told him briefly about her life in the city, her work, her responsibilities, her wealth. She did not brag. It was simply the truth. Michael listened, his expression calm and thoughtful. He asked a few questions, curious but not judgmental. It was the first time in a long time that Emma felt she could speak openly, without feeling judged or measured by her accomplishments. After breakfast, Michael suggested they check her car. "Let's see if we can get it running," he said. The car was parked near the edge of the forest, its sleek black paint dulled by dust and dirt from the long journey. Emma followed him, noting the contrast between the shiny vehicle and the rough natural surroundings. Michael examined the engine carefully, checking wires, hoses, and belts. He moved with skill and precision, despite never having worked on luxury cars before. His knowledge was practical, born of necessity and experience rather than formal training. Emma watched, fascinated by how focused and capable he was. She had met many people who knew how to repair machines, but Michael seemed to approach it with patience, care, and a quiet confidence that was rare. As he worked, Michael explained each step in simple terms. "Sometimes it's not about fixing things perfectly," he said. "It's about doing enough to make them work and last until you can do more. Life's the same way. You fix what you can, you care for it, and you keep going." Emma listened, captivated. There was a wisdom in his words that felt genuine, unforced. For the first time in her life, she felt that knowledge and experience mattered more than wealth or status. She realized that Michael's life had taught him lessons she had never learned in boardrooms or business meetings. Hours passed, and Michael finally gave a satisfied nod. "It should run now, but if it gives you trouble again, there's a small mechanic in town who can help further." Emma started the engine, and to her relief, it purred smoothly. She smiled, grateful but also humbled. "Thank you, Michael. I don't know what I would have done without you." Michael waved her thanks away. "No need for that. You're welcome any time." As she walked back toward the cabin, Emma noticed the little things around her, the way sunlight touched the leaves, the fresh scent of pine, and the distant call of a woodpecker. Everything seemed more alive, more meaningful than anything she had experienced in her polished city life. "Do you ever feel lonely out here?" she asked as they walked together. Michael paused and thought for a moment. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but loneliness isn't always bad. It teaches you about yourself. It teaches you to appreciate what's around you, the little joys, the quiet moments, and sometimes it brings people together who need each other." Emma considered this, feeling a strange warmth in her chest. She realized that in her life of wealth she had never truly appreciated solitude or simplicity. She had surrounded herself with people, noise, and obligations, yet never understood the quiet power of being alone with oneself, and with someone trustworthy and kind. Over the next few days, Emma stayed longer than she had planned. She helped Michael with small repairs around the cabin, replacing broken window panes, cleaning the moss from the roof, and tending to the small garden that Michael had started in a cleared patch of earth. She discovered that she enjoyed the physical work, the satisfaction of creating something with her own hands. It was hard, sometimes frustrating, but it was honest work that brought immediate results. Michael showed her how to chop firewood safely, how to carry heavy planks without straining herself, and how to measure and cut precisely for repairs. Emma watched him patiently, noticing his careful attention to every detail, the pride in his work, and the gentle way he treated both the cabin and the small pieces of nature around it. One afternoon, after a long morning of work, they sat outside on a fallen log, drinking water and resting. The forest was alive with the sounds of animals and the wind through the trees. Emma turned to Michael. "I never realized that life could feel this full without so many things," she said quietly. Michael smiled, brushing dirt from his hands. "Most people don't," he said. "They think happiness comes from wealth or power, but it doesn't. Happiness comes from care, from being present, from helping and being with people who matter. And sometimes it comes from the smallest things." Emma nodded slowly, feeling her heart opening in ways she had not expected. She realized that Michael had a kind of wealth that could not be measured in dollars, a wealth of patience, understanding, and love for the world. She had come seeking a break from her life, but she had found something far more profound, a glimpse of the kind of life and love she had never known. As evening fell, the cabin glowed again with firelight. Michael prepared a modest meal, and Emma helped set the small wooden table. They ate in comfortable silence, sharing smiles and glances rather than words. There was a quiet bond forming between them, built not on luxury or obligation, but on mutual respect, care, and the shared experience of living simply and honestly. Later, as they cleaned up, Emma felt a pang of sadness. She knew she would have to return to the city eventually, to her responsibilities, her obligations, and her life of wealth. But the thought of leaving this cabin, this forest, and Michael filled her with reluctance she had not expected. Michael noticed her quiet mood and said, You don't have to go yet, if you don't want to. Stay as long as you need. The forest doesn't rush, and neither should you. Emma looked at him, surprised. Stay, but I have a life back in the city. Michael shrugged gently. Your life can wait a little. Sometimes the important things can't be scheduled. Sometimes they happen when you least expect them. Emma felt her heart swell. She realized that Michael's words were not just about staying in the cabin. They were about life, about love, about learning to prioritize what truly mattered. She had spent so many years chasing deadlines, meetings, and money, and now she saw that she had missed the most important lessons. Care, patience, presence, and genuine human connection. That night, as Emma lay in bed, she thought about the day, the work, the quiet moments, the conversations with Michael. She realized that she was beginning to understand something she had never truly felt before. Love was not about grand gestures, wealth, or admiration. Love was quiet, patient, and practical. It was shown in actions, in care, and in the willingness to share life with someone who truly mattered. Outside, the forest was dark and still, yet alive with the subtle sounds of nocturnal creatures. The cabin stood firm, a symbol of resilience and care, much like the man who had repaired it with his own hands. Michael slept nearby, unaware of how profoundly he had already touched the life of the woman who had stumbled into his world. Emma closed her eyes and breathed deeply, feeling the warmth of the cabin, the calm of the forest, and the gentle presence of Michael. She had come seeking rest, but she had found something far more valuable. A lesson in life, a glimpse of true love, and the realization that the simplest acts of care could have the most profound impact. For the first time in years, Emma felt a quiet hope, a gentle excitement for the days to come, and the subtle, unexpected joy of discovering a connection that was real, patient, and enduring. And she knew, deep in her heart, that her life and her understanding of love would never be the same again. The days in the forest passed quietly, but they were full of subtle moments that carried meaning. Michael and Emma had settled into a routine that felt natural, almost effortless. Each morning, Michael would rise with the sun to tend to the cabin and the small surrounding garden, and Emma would join him after breakfast, learning the rhythm of a life that was grounded in simplicity. Emma discovered joy in small tasks she had never considered meaningful before. She learned to sweep the floor of the cabin, to stack firewood neatly, to check the walls and roof for signs of wear. Each task, no matter how minor, carried a sense of purpose and satisfaction she had never felt in her city life, where everything was planned, ordered, and immediate. Here, the results of her work were visible, tangible, and lasting. Michael taught her to approach every task with care. He explained that life, like the cabin, required patience and attention. If you rush, he said one morning as they replaced a broken window pane, things can fall apart. But if you take the time to do it right, everything lasts longer and it feels better in the process. Emma watched him carefully. There was a quiet dignity in the way Michael moved. Every action was deliberate, precise, and full of attention. He did not boast or complain. He simply worked with patience and purpose. It was a kind of grace she had rarely witnessed in her life of wealth and power. She found herself admiring not just his skills, but the calm strength of his character. As they worked together, they spoke of their lives, carefully avoiding the temptation to talk about wealth or possessions. Emma told Michael about her childhood in a quiet town, the small joys she had known before ambition and opportunity had pulled her into a fast-paced life. She told him of her dreams, the things she had once wished for that had been replaced by obligations and success. Michael listened, nodding occasionally, and shared stories of his own past. He spoke of the city he had left behind, of hardships he had faced, and of the lessons he had learned through struggle and solitude. He did not speak with bitterness or regret. He spoke with honesty, revealing the strength he had gained and the wisdom that came from living simply and fully in each moment. One afternoon, as the sun shone through the canopy in golden beams, Michael suggested they take a walk in the forest. The air was cool and fragrant, and the leaves rustled softly beneath their feet. Emma followed, noticing the way the forest seemed to embrace them. Every tree, every patch of moss, every ray of sunlight seemed alive with possibility and quiet beauty. "Do you ever miss the city?" she asked, her voice soft, almost hesitant. Michael shook his head gently. "Sometimes I think about it," he admitted. "But I've learned that being here, living simply, has given me more than the city ever could. I have peace, I have purpose, and I have this life. That's enough." Emma considered his words, feeling a strange warmth in her chest. For years she had measured her life by success, money, and recognition. But in Michael's simple life, she saw a richness that no amount of wealth could provide. He had a sense of fulfillment, contentment, and joy that came not from possessions, but from living with intention, care, and love for the world around him. As they walked deeper into the forest, Michael pointed out signs of wildlife, tracks in the mud, nests in the trees, and distant calls of animals hidden among the foliage. He explained how each creature had its role, its place in the delicate balance of the forest. Emma listened intently, fascinated by the way he observed and understood the natural world. It was a patience and awareness she had never learned in her hurried life, where everything moved too fast to notice the subtle details. When they returned to the cabin, Emma felt a sense of calm she could not explain. The forest, the cabin, and Michael had all combined to create a sense of belonging she had never known. She realized that her life of wealth, while impressive to others, had never provided her with this feeling of being truly at home, truly at peace, or truly connected to someone else. Over the next few days, Emma found herself helping Michael with larger repairs. Together they reinforced the cabin's roof, repaired broken floorboards, and patched gaps in the walls. Michael showed her how to handle tools safely, how to measure precisely, and how to approach each task with patience and care. Emma discovered a joy in physical labor she had never experienced before. Each nail she hammered, each board she aligned, each patch she applied brought a quiet satisfaction that was both calming and exhilarating. One evening, as they sat by the fire after a long day, Emma spoke with unexpected honesty. "Michael," she said softly, "I've never known anyone like you. You live with so little, yet you seem to have so much. How do you do it?" Michael looked into the fire, his face calm and thoughtful. "It's not about having much," he replied. "It's about caring for what you do have. It's about being present, paying attention, and giving love where it matters. Happiness isn't found in things, it's found in moments, in people, and in doing what matters." Emma absorbed his words, feeling a deep shift inside. For years she had chased achievements and possessions, always thinking they would bring satisfaction. Yet here in this quiet cabin, with this humble man who had so little materially but so much in spirit, she began to understand a truth she had never known. Love and fulfillment were not about wealth or recognition. They were about attention, care, and genuine human connection. As the days turned into a week, Emma began to realize that her life had been missing something fundamental. She had been surrounded by people who admired her, but she had never been seen for who she truly was. In Michael's presence, she felt seen, valued, and understood. She discovered that being cared for and giving care in return could create a connection far stronger than any contract, deal, or obligation. One morning, as they worked side by side in the garden, Emma paused and looked at Michael. "Do you ever feel lonely here?" she asked, her voice hesitant. Michael thought for a moment. "Lonely?" he repeated. "Sometimes, yes. But loneliness isn't always bad. It teaches you about yourself. It teaches you to appreciate the small things and the people who truly matter. And sometimes it brings people together in ways you never expect." Emma smiled, a small warmth spreading in her chest. She realized that loneliness had been something she had known her whole life, despite being surrounded by wealth, attention, and people. It had not been a lack of company, but a lack of connection. And now, she felt that connection forming with Michael, quietly, naturally, and without any pretense. The more time they spent together, the more Emma understood the depth of Michael's quiet strength. He had lived through hardships that she could scarcely imagine, yet he bore no bitterness. He had found contentment not in what he had, but in what he did with what he had. And he had an extraordinary capacity for kindness, patience, and love, even for someone he had only just met. One afternoon, as the sun painted the forest in warm golden light, Emma accidentally dropped a plank she was carrying. Michael caught it before it could hit the ground. "Careful," he said gently. "You don't want to hurt yourself." "I know," she replied, laughing softly. "But it's not easy, is it? Even simple tasks require attention and care." Michael smiled. "That's life. Simple things often require the most effort, but that effort is worth it. You see results and it feels good because you know you did it yourself." Emma nodded, feeling a quiet thrill. She realized that this lesson applied not just to repairs but to life itself. She had been living a life dictated by others, always seeking approval or success, never taking the time to care deeply about what mattered. Here, with Michael, she was learning a new way of living, one that was honest, patient, and full of meaning. That evening, as they sat by the fire once again, Emma felt a strange mix of gratitude and longing. She was grateful for the lessons Michael had shown her, for the care he had offered, and for the connection she felt with him. And she realized that she was beginning to long for something she had never expected: to stay in this cabin, to continue learning, and to be near Michael. For the first time, Emma understood a truth she had never considered before. Love was not about grand gestures or wealth. Love was about presence, care, patience, and understanding. It was about noticing the small details, valuing the effort, and giving oneself fully without expectation. And she had found that kind of love unexpectedly in a man who had so little materially, yet so much in his heart. As night fell over the forest, the cabin glowed warmly against the darkening trees. The wind whispered softly through the pines, and the forest seemed alive with quiet, unseen life. Michael slept peacefully, unaware of the depth of change that was already taking place in Emma's heart. And Emma lay awake, feeling a gentle warmth, a sense of belonging, and a new understanding of what it truly meant to love and be loved. In the quiet of the forest, with the fire crackling softly, a bond was forming, a bond built not on wealth, status, or convenience, but on attention, care, and genuine connection. And though neither of them fully realized it yet, this bond was the beginning of a transformation that would touch both their lives in ways they could never have predicted. The morning sunlight poured through the tall pine trees, filling the cabin with a gentle golden light. Emma woke to the smell of fresh coffee and toasted bread. Michael was already moving around the small kitchen, carefully preparing breakfast. His hands were steady, and there was a quiet focus in every motion. "Good morning," he said softly, looking up and smiling. "Sleep well?" "Yes," Emma replied, stretching. "I think I slept better than I ever have in the city." She paused, noticing the warmth in the cabin. "It's peaceful here, different, somehow better." Michael nodded. "The forest has a way of slowing things down. Makes you notice what really matters. You can feel it if you take the time." Emma watched him with quiet admiration. She had begun to notice so many things about Michael: the way he carried himself, the care he put into every task, the patience in his actions, and the kindness in his eyes. There was a strength in him that was gentle, and it drew her in more and more each day. After breakfast, they stepped outside to work on the cabin. The previous week's repairs had held well, but Michael had noticed a few boards loosening on the back porch. Emma followed him, carrying tools and learning his method of repairing each plank carefully. "This one needs to be replaced," Michael said, pointing to a warped board. "But see here? If you take your time, measure carefully, and secure it properly, it will last for many years." Emma nodded and followed his instructions. She felt a sense of accomplishment as she hammered the board in place, aligning it with care. She had never worked with wood before, yet under Michael's patient guidance she felt capable and proud. There was a quiet joy in creating something with her own hands, in seeing tangible results of effort and care. As they worked, Michael spoke gently about life. "You know," he said, "life is like this cabin. It doesn't matter how strong you think you are or how much you have. If you ignore the small details, if you don't take care of it, it can fall apart. But if you put your attention into it, nurture it, and protect it, it becomes something strong, lasting, and full of meaning." Emma listened, feeling a connection with his words that went far beyond the cabin itself. She realized that in her city life, she had been ignoring the small details that truly mattered. She had focused on money, status, and appearances, thinking they defined success. But Michael was teaching her that love, care, and presence were far more important. After the repairs, they took a short break and sat on the porch. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and earth. Sunlight filtered through the branches, creating patterns on the ground. Emma looked around and felt a sense of calm and belonging she had never experienced before. "Do you ever get lonely?" she asked quietly, unsure if she wanted to hear the answer. Michael paused. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but loneliness isn't always bad. It gives you a chance to think, to reflect, and to appreciate the things that really matter. And sometimes it brings people together in ways you never expect." Emma thought about that carefully, In her life of wealth and constant movement, she had been surrounded by people but had never felt truly connected to anyone. She realized that what she had been missing was not company, but understanding and care. And here with Michael, she felt a growing sense of connection, trust, and admiration. Over the next few days, Emma stayed in the forest, helping Michael with various tasks. They worked together to repair the roof, strengthen the cabin's foundation, and build a small garden to grow vegetables and herbs. Michael taught her how to plant seeds carefully, water them gently, and tend to them with patience. Emma discovered that caring for something fragile and seeing it grow gave her a deep sense of satisfaction. One afternoon, they were planting rows of vegetables when a sudden gust of wind scattered the freshly planted seeds. Emma looked at the small sprouts, frustrated. "All this work, and now it's ruined," she said softly, bending to gather the seeds. Michael placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's not ruined," he said calmly. "Life isn't always perfect. Sometimes things get disrupted, but you plant again, care again, and it will grow stronger. That's how it works, just like with people." Emma looked up at him, struck by the simplicity and truth of his words. He had a way of taking everyday experiences and turning them into lessons about life, patience, and love. She realized that Michael's perspective was something she had never encountered before, grounded, honest, and full of quiet wisdom. As evening approached, they sat by the fire again, tired but content. Emma noticed that she felt lighter than she had in years. Her mind was quieter, her heart fuller, and she felt a strange warmth in her chest whenever she looked at Michael. She did not understand it fully yet, but she knew it was something important. "Michael," she said softly, "I never realized that life could feel this full without all the things I have. Without money, without power, just simple moments shared with someone you care about." Michael smiled. "It's easy to forget that when you're caught up in the rush of the world. But the truth is simple. Happiness comes from caring for what's around you and for the people you love. That's all it takes." Emma thought about her life in the city. She had built her world on ambition and wealth, thinking that these things would bring fulfillment. But now, sitting beside Michael in the quiet forest, she saw how empty those pursuits had been without connection, care, and attention. She realized that love was not something that could be bought or achieved through success. It had to be felt, given, and nurtured. Over the following week, Emma began to open her heart in ways she had never expected. She laughed more freely, helped with more repairs, and even shared small stories of her childhood, her fears and her dreams. Michael listened patiently, never judging, always encouraging. Their bond grew stronger with each shared moment, built on respect, understanding, and the quiet knowledge that they were both learning from each other. One rainy afternoon, as they worked under the shelter of the cabin's porch, Emma glanced at Michael. The rain fell softly, creating a soothing rhythm on the roof. "Do you ever wish for more than this?" she asked. Michael considered her question. "More?" he repeated. "Sometimes, yes. But I've learned that wanting too much can make you blind to what you already have. I have this cabin, this forest, and people like you who come into my life unexpectedly. That's more than I could ask for." Emma smiled, feeling her chest warm. She had spent her life chasing more wealth, more recognition, more control. But Michael's words reminded her that contentment was not found in having more, but in appreciating what already existed and nurturing it with care. That night, as they sat by the fire, Emma felt a sense of peace she had never known. She realized that she had been learning something far more valuable than repairs or survival skills. She had been learning about love, its patience, its care, and its quiet power. She understood that love was not dramatic or loud. It was simple, consistent, and rooted in attention and presence. Emma watched Michael as he tended the fire, noticing the lines on his face, the gentle strength in his hands, and the kindness in his eyes. She felt a deep admiration for him, not for what he had accomplished in the past, but for who he was, a man who lived fully, cared deeply, and loved quietly without expectation. As the fire crackled, Emma leaned back, letting the warmth of the flames and the forest surround her. She felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced in her life of wealth and ambition. For the first time, she realized that love was not something she could find through effort or strategy. It was something that grew naturally, through care, patience, and shared moments. In the quiet of the cabin, With the rain tapping softly on the roof and the fire burning warmly, Emma felt her heart begin to open. She did not yet know what the future held, but she knew that being with Michael, learning from him, and sharing these simple yet profound moments was teaching her a truth she had never understood. Love was not about wealth, status, or grand gestures. Love was about presence, care, and giving oneself fully to someone who mattered. And as she drifted off to sleep that night, Emma felt a quiet hope for the days to come. She had come into the forest seeking a brief escape from her life of wealth and obligation, but she had found something far more valuable, a lesson in life, a connection with a man of quiet strength, and a new understanding of what it truly meant to love and be loved. The days grew warmer as spring settled over the forest, painting it with shades of green and bursts of wildflowers. Emma woke early that morning, noticing the soft golden light spilling into the cabin. The fire from the previous night had long burned down, leaving a faint warmth in the hearth. Michael was already outside, tending to the small garden they had nurtured together. Emma stepped quietly to the porch, watching him work. He moved with patience and precision, carefully examining the soil, turning it, and gently pressing seeds into place. She realized that he treated everything, the plants, the cabin, the forest, with care and respect, as though every small detail mattered. In that moment, Emma understood that this careful attention was not just about survival, it was about love. "Good morning," Michael said without looking up, his voice calm and steady. "The soil is ready for the next row. Would you like to help?" Emma smiled and nodded, taking the small shovel he handed her. As they worked side by side, the quiet rhythm of their actions became almost meditative. Each seed they planted, each small task they completed, carried a sense of purpose that Emma had never felt in her city life. She noticed the satisfaction in Michael's expression, the calm in his demeanor, and she realized that the work itself was secondary to the care and attention he put into it. After a few hours, they sat on the porch with cold water, looking over the rows of freshly planted vegetables. "You know," Michael said thoughtfully, "life is a lot like this garden. You put in the effort, you give attention, and you care, and even if things don't always go perfectly, what you nurture grows stronger." Emma nodded, reflecting on the metaphor. She had spent so much of her life chasing perfection, rushing from one obligation to another, seeking recognition and wealth. Here, in the quiet forest, she was learning a different truth. Love, patience, and care could be far more powerful than ambition or status. As the days passed, Emma felt herself growing closer to Michael. It was not a sudden or dramatic connection. It was quiet, steady, and genuine. She noticed small things. The way he smiled when a seedling took root, the way he listened without interrupting, the calm reassurance in his presence. She felt herself drawn to him, not because of who he was in the world, but because of who he was, the man who lived simply, cared deeply, and loved quietly. One afternoon, a storm rolled in over the forest. Rain poured down in thick sheets and the wind rattled the cabin windows. Emma watched from the porch as Michael secured the shutters and reinforced the roof. He moved with practiced efficiency, unbothered by the storm. She felt a surge of admiration for him, realizing that his strength was not loud or boastful but steady, calm, and unwavering. When the storm passed, they stepped outside, the forest glistening with rain. Puddles reflected the gray sky and drops clung to leaves and branches. Emma laughed softly as Michael splashed through a puddle, and for the first time in a long while she felt free from the constraints of her former life. Here, there were no schedules, no obligations, no judgments, just the two of them and the simple, honest work of caring for their surroundings. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Emma spoke with a vulnerability she had never shown before. "Michael," she said quietly, "I think I've been blind all these years. I thought love was about grand gestures, gifts, or wealth. But I see now that it's about care, attention, and presence. It's in the little things you do every day, and the way you make people feel valued." Michael looked at her, his eyes soft. "You're right," he said gently. "Love is simple, but it's not easy. It takes patience, kindness, and consistency. It's shown in actions, not words. And it grows when both people care for each other and the world around them." Emma's heart swelled. She realized that Michael had unknowingly taught her the lessons she had been missing her entire life. She had chased wealth, status, and recognition, thinking they would bring fulfillment. But here in this small cabin surrounded by the forest, she had discovered the truth. Love and happiness were found in care, connection, and presence. The following days brought a sense of harmony. They repaired the last broken section of the porch, replaced a few roof tiles, and strengthened the cabin walls. Emma learned to measure, cut, and hammer with increasing skill, often surprising herself with her own abilities. Michael guided her patiently, praising her efforts without arrogance or condescension. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip behind the trees, Emma and Michael gathered the first vegetables from their garden. They cooked a simple meal together, sharing laughter and conversation. Emma noticed how natural and easy it felt to be with him, how her heart no longer felt burdened by expectations or pressure. "Do you ever think about leaving this place?" Emma asked softly, her voice tinged with curiosity and worry. Michael shook his head. "This is where I belong. The forest, the cabin, it's home. But life isn't about staying in one place. It's about appreciating where you are and what you have while you're there." Emma nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She knew that her life in the city was still waiting for her, but she also realized that her time in the forest had changed her in ways she could not ignore. She had learned lessons about love, patience, and care that could not be unlearned. That night, as they sat by the fire, Emma felt a quiet urge to speak her thoughts aloud. "Michael," she said softly, "I've realized something important. I think I've fallen in love with you." Michael's eyes widened slightly, then softened. He reached for her hand, his touch gentle and reassuring. "Emma," he said quietly, "I've felt the same way. I didn't say it before because I wanted to make sure we understood each other, truly understood what love means. But I feel it too." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes, not from sadness but from the overwhelming emotion of finally being seen and understood. She had spent so many years in a life of wealth, surrounded by people who admired her but never truly knew her. Here, with Michael, she felt known, valued, and cherished for who she was. They spent the night talking, sharing stories, hopes, and dreams. Emma realized that love was not about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was quiet, steady, and built on care, respect, and presence. Michael had shown her that through his actions, his patience, and his unwavering kindness. The next morning, they worked together to prepare the cabin for the coming summer. They repaired the garden fence, built small shelves for tools, and cleaned the interior with a sense of pride and accomplishment. Emma discovered that the simple acts of care brought her a deep happiness she had never known. One afternoon, while tending the garden, Emma paused to watch Michael. He was kneeling by a row of plants, carefully removing weeds and adjusting stakes. She felt a surge of gratitude and love, realizing that this man, who had so little in material wealth, had given her the greatest gift she could ever receive, the understanding of what it truly meant to love and be loved. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the forest, Emma turned to Michael. "I don't want to leave this place," she said quietly. "Not yet. I want to stay with you. I want to keep learning, growing, and living here, with care, presence, and love." Michael smiled, his eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. "Then stay," he said softly. "This cabin, this forest, it's yours as much as mine. We'll face the days together, learning and growing as we go." For the first time in her life, Emma felt truly at home. She realized that love was not about wealth, status, or grand gestures. It was about presence, care, and genuine connection. Michael had unknowingly taught her the most valuable lessons, and in return she had opened her heart fully to him, discovering a love that was quiet, steady, and deeply fulfilling. As night fell over the forest, the cabin glowed warmly against the darkened trees. The fire crackled softly, casting flickering shadows across the walls. Emma sat close to Michael, feeling a deep sense of peace, gratitude, and hope. She knew that the days ahead would be filled with work, laughter, and quiet moments of care, and that was exactly what she wanted. In the forest, with the cabin as their shared home, Emma had discovered a truth she would carry forever. Love was not a possession or an achievement. It was care, attention, patience, and presence. And in Michael, she had found all of these qualities quietly and gently, showing her the true meaning of love. Spring had fully arrived in the forest. The trees were lush and green. Wildflowers bloomed in gentle clusters, and the air was filled with the fresh scent of earth and pine. Emma and Michael had grown accustomed to their routine, their days a balance of work, quiet reflection, and shared laughter. The cabin, once worn and fragile, now stood strong and welcoming, a symbol of the care and effort they had poured into it together. That morning, Emma woke before Michael, lying in the quiet stillness of the cabin. She listened to the soft rustle of the leaves outside and the distant call of birds. A feeling of calm washed over her, unlike anything she had ever experienced in her fast-paced life of wealth and obligation. Here she was not measured by her status or possessions. She was simply Emma, and that was enough. Michael soon emerged from the kitchen carrying 2 cups of steaming coffee. "Good morning," he said, smiling warmly. "Sleep well?" "Yes," she replied, taking the cup he offered. She held it in her hands, feeling the warmth, and smiled. "I can't remember the last time I felt this. Calm, this. Complete." Michael sat beside her, taking a sip from his cup. "Peace comes when you're connected to what matters. It's not something you find in the city or in wealth. It's something you build with care, patience, and love." Emma nodded, reflecting on how much her life had changed in the weeks she had spent here. She remembered the first day she had arrived, hesitant and uncertain, expecting a brief escape. Instead, she had found a man whose quiet strength, patience, and kindness had taught her lessons she could never have learned in her world of luxury. After breakfast, they stepped outside to tend the garden and the cabin. Michael showed Emma a small section of fencing that needed repair. Together, they lifted the boards, measured carefully, and secured them in place. Emma felt a sense of pride as she hammered the last nail into the fence, realizing that she was capable of creating and maintaining something lasting. As they worked, Michael spoke thoughtfully. "You've changed a lot since you arrived, Emma. I see it in the way you handle yourself and the care you give to everything around you. You've learned to see value not in possessions, but in effort, attention, and love." Emma paused, looking at him. "I've learned more than I ever imagined, not just about work or survival, but about myself, about life, and about love. I used to think love was something grand and dramatic, something you had to chase or earn. Now I see it's in the small, quiet moments, in care and presence." Michael smiled, a quiet understanding in his eyes. "You've learned well. Love is patient, steady, and often quiet. It grows slowly, nourished by small acts of care and kindness, and it becomes something strong, lasting, and meaningful." The afternoon passed with the rhythm of simple work, planting more vegetables, reinforcing the cabin walls, and collecting firewood. They spoke little, content in each other's company, finding joy in shared effort and the silent understanding that grew between them. As the sun began to set, Emma suggested a walk through the forest. The air was crisp and the path was soft underfoot. They wandered together, occasionally pointing out flowers, animal tracks, or the patterns of sunlight through the leaves. The forest seemed to embrace them, a witness to their growing bond. At a small clearing, Emma stopped and looked around, taking in the beauty of the golden light filtering through the trees. "I never imagined I could feel this happy," she said softly. "I've spent my whole life chasing things that I thought would matter, and yet nothing has ever felt as real as this." Michael nodded, resting a hand gently on her shoulder. "That's because this is real. The connection you feel here, the care, the effort, the attention, it's tangible. It's part of life, not a decoration or a status symbol. This is love, Emma, pure and simple, and it's stronger than anything else you've ever known." Emma felt her heart swell with emotion. She realized that her feelings for Michael had grown far deeper than admiration or gratitude. She had fallen in love not with the idea of him, but with the reality of who he was. Honest, patient, and kind, a man whose heart matched the quiet strength of his hands. As they walked back to the cabin, the sky painted with shades of orange and pink, Emma took a deep breath. "Michael," she said softly, "I want to stay here. I don't want to go back to my old life, at least not yet. I want to build a life here with you, learning, growing, and loving together." Michael looked at her, his eyes reflecting the last rays of sunlight. "I would like that too," he said. "This cabin, this forest, it's not just mine. It can be ours. We can build a life filled with care, connection, and love. That's what matters most." A gentle smile crossed Emma's face, a warmth she had never known in the city. She realized that the most valuable lessons she had learned were not in books, schools, or business meetings, but here, in the forest, alongside Michael. She had learned that love was not a possession, a gift, or a goal. It was a choice made daily through care, attention, and presence. That evening, they cooked a simple meal together, laughing as they worked and sharing stories of their past. Emma felt a deep contentment, realizing that happiness was not something to chase or acquire. It was something created through shared moments, effort, and genuine connection. After dinner, they sat by the fire, the cabin glowing warmly against the darkening forest. Michael took her hand in his, a gesture of quiet reassurance. "Emma," he said softly, "I want you to know that it's real. I don't have wealth or status, but I have my heart, my care, and my presence, and I offer it to you freely." Emma felt tears welling up, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming emotion of being truly seen and valued. "I know," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "and I feel the same way. I've never been happier, never felt more at home, and never understood love so clearly." The forest outside grew quiet, the only sound the soft rustling of leaves and the distant call of an owl. Emma rested her head on Michael's shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart. For the first time in her life, she understood that love was not about possession or grand gestures, but about presence, care, and the steady giving of oneself to someone else. Days turned into weeks, and their bond deepened further. They worked together on the cabin, the garden, and small projects around the forest, each task strengthening their connection. Emma found joy in even the simplest acts, carrying firewood, planting seeds, and cleaning the cabin. Every effort, no matter how small, was a shared expression of love and care. One morning, as they watched the sunrise over the forest, Emma realized that her life had changed completely. She no longer felt the pressure of wealth, status, or obligation. She no longer measured her worth by possessions or accomplishments. She felt rich in ways she had never imagined, in connection, love, and purpose. Michael turned to her, his eyes reflecting the golden light. "Emma, this life, it's ours to shape. We can continue to build, to care, to love, and to grow, and I want to do it with you." Emma smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. "I want that too," she said softly. "I want to stay, to learn, to grow, and to love with you. I've learned more in these weeks than I ever could have in a lifetime of wealth." Michael reached for her hand, holding it firmly, yet gently. "Then we'll build our life here together, with care, patience, and love. That's all that truly matters." As they sat together on the porch, watching the forest awaken in the soft morning light, Emma felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had come to the forest seeking a simple escape, and instead she had found the truest lessons of life. She had learned that love was not a possession, a gift, or an achievement. It was care, attention, and presence. And she had found it unexpectedly and fully, in a man who had so little materially but so much in heart. In the quiet of the forest, with the cabin as their home and each other's hands intertwined, Emma realized that this was the life she had always been searching for. She had discovered the true meaning of love not in wealth, status, or grand gestures, but in care, connection, and shared presence. And in Michael, she had found a love that was steady, enduring, and profoundly real. The forest stood as witness to their bond, the cabin a symbol of their efforts, and the quiet moments between them, the foundation of a life built on love. Emma knew that whatever challenges the future might bring, they had already discovered the most important truth. Love was not measured by what one had, but by what one gave, nurtured, and shared. As night fell, the cabin glowed softly against the darkening forest. Emma and Michael sat together, hearts full, hands intertwined, and a quiet understanding between them. In each other they had found home, love, and the deep fulfillment that comes from living with care, presence, and genuine connection. And in that peaceful forest, surrounded by the life they had built together, Emma knew she had finally discovered the greatest gift of all, the true meaning of love.